In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most gracious. Students, as you know, we were doing human skeleton and the first part of it was described in the previous lecture. Now we are going to have the second part of human skeleton, which is called the appendicular skeleton. Appendicular skeleton is made up of two different parts. One is the pectoral girdle or the forelimbs, and the second one is called pelvic girdle or the hind limbs. The first bone that we will discuss in pectoral girdle is the shoulder bone, and its name is scapula, and the second bone is called clavicle, which is also known as collarbone. Clavicles are a pair of bones which are present in the neck region. One end of each curved bone articulates with the sternum. Sternum is the chest cavity, and the other end articulates with the scapula, that is the shoulder blade. Now this is the scapula or the shoulder bone or the shoulder blade, which is represented by green color in the diagram. The red color in the diagram is showing the collarbone, which is also known as clavicle, and it articulates with the sternum and scapula both. Then comes a cavity in which the upper part of the arm is being joined, and this cavity is known as the glenoid cavity, in which the upper end or epiphysis of the upper part of the bone fits perfectly. This joint is called ball and socket joint, which is made after the fitting in of the upper bone of your arm. The ball and socket joint is a joint that can move in all three axes or in more than two different directions. Then comes the bones of your arms. The upper bone is called humerus, which will fit into the glenoid cavity, and it is clearly represented in the diagram. Then there are two different bones which are present below the elbows. One is called radius and the other one is called ulna. Radius is present outwardly, whereas ulna is present inwardly. All these bones will collectively help in the movement of the arms or the pectoral girdles. The main difference between radius and ulna is that radius is comparatively long and it is the outer bone of the forearm, whereas ulna is the long bone on the inner side of the forearm and slightly bigger than the radius. Then comes the bones of your hands. There are two rows of 8 wrist bones, and the upper row articulates with the radius and forms the wrist joint. Now, the bones of the hands are called carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. There are 5 metacarpals, which forms the framework of the palm of the hand, and there are 5 rows of the phalanges. Total 14 bones are present in the phalanges, which are present in your fingers. These phalanges are subdivided into 3 different types of phalanges, which are called proximal, intermediate, and distal phalanges. All these bones will help in the movement of your hand. The clavicle, scapula, humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, metacarpals and phalanges, all the bones of the pectoral girdle have been shown in this diagram. Now coming up towards the pelvic girdle, which are the bones of your hind limbs, and it attaches to the vertebral column. The pelvic girdle is made up of 3 units, and these 3 bones are called ilium, ischium and pubis, which forms the coxal bones. We will learn them one by one. In the diagram here, you can see ilium is the broadest bone in the whole body, and you can say the biggest bone in the whole body, which forms the flap-like structures of your hip region. Then the pubis is a bone which is shown by yellow color, and ischium that forms the base of the hip region is shown by green color. Now if we talk about the pelvic bones, or the bones which are present in your legs, the upper bone or the thigh bone is called femur. This is the proximal bone which forms a hip joint with the hip bone into acetabulum. It again forms the ball and socket joint, which can move in more than one plane. Next is the femoral shaft, that is the middle part of the bone, which we discussed in the previous lecture. Now coming towards the next part, that is the knee of your leg. The kneecap is called patella. Then comes the lower bones. There are 2 different bones. One is called tibia and the other is called fibula. Tibia is the inner bone and fibula is the outer bone. Tibia is basically the largest bone in the leg, and fibula or the outer bone is the thin bone which joins the tibia just below the knee joint and just above the ankle. Now in the pictures you can see patella which is represented with a green color. In the first diagram, this is the kneecap. You can easily see the patella in the next diagram from the side view of the leg bones, in which the femur fits completely into the knee joint, and the tibia and fibula are very much obvious in the diagram. Tibia is the thickest bone of the leg and fibula is the thin bone. Now if we talk about the lower limbs or the feet, again there are different bones which are arranged in rows of 5. There are 5 rows of 14 phalanges, tarsals and metatarsals. Tarsals and metatarsals will form the bones which are joined with the ankle, and phalanges are the bones which are present in the fingers of your feet. So this was all about the pectoral and pelvic girdle. If you have any question, you can ask me. Thank you so much.